Alright, welcome back to another behind the scenes vlog of airport updates. We have started working on the air side of our Philadelphia airport expansion, and well, the first thing that of course entails is we need to paint the base plate, and for that I am simply mixing white and black acrylic paint to get a gray tone, and then I'm just simply painting the plate to give it a coherent look. So after having cleared out the plate and then of course painted the plate with a grey base paint, I haven't painted the entire board, but the rest of the board I will paint at a later stage. Probably get a slightly different grey tone, but that doesn't matter. It just adds a little bit to the overall layout that we don't have the exact same colors everywhere. But now that we have a base paint for a large section of the board, the next part we need to do is we need to place the terminals with aircraft to get a feel for the exact placement of these areas, because we want to have a different color for the base around the terminals and the taxiways. So to explain exactly what I'm doing here is simply that I have placed the terminals to the board now that the base paint has dried, and then of course I've added various aircraft that I want to have at these terminals. I've done a similar thing over here. I'm not 100% done with the setup here, might still tweak it, but this could very well be how it will look in the end. But over here I'm pretty happy with it. We will have 3 A380 gates over there, one more over here, so we can get 4 A380s into the airport instead of 1, which we had originally over at the old setup, which of course continues, but I think we will replace the A380 gate over there so we can add more aircraft over there. And then next to the A380 gates we will have at least one more wide-body stand here, and then I guess 2 more stands here. This for sure for a narrow body. I think this could be both narrow body and wide body, but what we will see in the end how that will turn out. Now that I have a feeling for the aircraft and the terminals and their positioning on the board, I have marked up this area, basically taped it off, and that then of course gives me measurement for the taxiways. Now the taxiways, it's fairly simple. People often ask, oh, how wide should they be? You can go onto Google Maps and measure out the distances of taxiways in real life and then convert that down to your scale. For me, of course, it's scale 500. If it's scale 400 or 200 or whatever scale you're working on, you can just convert it down to that. But you can also do it very simple. I have a terminal here with an A380. So what you can do here is simply take a model, an A380 in this case, place it down to the taxiway, and yeah, then of course, you can see here, this looks like it is not fitting, because what I want to have is, I of course want to have the wings completely free on the taxiway, and if possible, a little bit of margin, about 1 centimeter on each side. Now, as I said, this does not look like it is the case here, but you have to think about, this is just the outer edge of the taxiway. This is still taxiway, but we'll get a different color later. So here I am absolutely within the margins. I have almost the full wing length and then about 1 centimeter in addition. So that's a very simple way how you can measure out if your taxiways are wide. The rest here is even wider, so there it's no problem whatsoever. So I've taped off all the areas that I want to have around the terminals that should keep this gray base paint. Now the rest, that will be taxiways, so I will give that a darker tone because I want it to look like tarmac. So that is the next larger part that needs to be painted. And once I've done that, I will then start again, have some smaller areas that need to have slightly different colors. I might add some areas where I'm using an entirely different gray or black tone, again to simulate basically maybe repairs in the taxiways. And once we've done that, we of course need to start marking up taxiway markings and then also terminal markings, so red lines around the jet bridges and so on and so on. Now, just to quickly go back to the overall setup, obviously we still have our Terminal 1 over there with PS A, B and C. And then over here, this will be the new Terminal 2. And this will be the new Terminal 3. So that means PS D and E. And then I have this little corner here right now occupied with a lot of building materials and a cutting board. But I imagine it's not final yet, but I will try to see if I perhaps could add some stands there, which could be a small cargo area, so we get a little bit of cargo into Philadelphia as well. Painting the board is a lengthy process because every time we apply a new color, we don't just need to mark up the areas where we want to apply the colors. No, they also need to be applied several times so that we have an even distribution and even coloring of the new areas we're working on. So far we have the light gray areas around the terminals, and we have now painted in the taxiways, which have gotten a darker gray tone, going more in directions of, well, tarmac. Really black and just pure tarmac is then what we have done here. This is basically just trying to simulate some repairs in the taxiways. We don't have quite as many of these kind of repairs in this area of the airport, because while I don't think the storyline will be that it is completely newly built, because technically I think Terminals 2 and 3 have already existed in our storyline so far, but they would have been completely refurbished in the last few years. Of course, in the old parts, if we go over here, we have many more repairs, so to say, at the stands and also the taxiways, but this is a much older part of the airport as well in our storyline. So, what have I else done? I have painted in, as I said, the taxiways. I have painted in what will become a service road, which will go here along the outer areas. Over there, I still need to do quite a bit of work, but we'll come to that. Then here, this is of course where we have Terminal 3. So there we had painted in a little bit of a lighter tone here, and now we have painted the second half. I wanted to have a bit of more diversity here so that we have kind of two tones. Then of course we have the taxiways, and then the same gray tone that we get on this side of the Terminal 3 we have over here, which I hope can become a smaller cargo area. Then of course we have a bit of landside here. Now I have painted in the foam board. My idea here is that we could add some of these jet fuel storage units, whatever it's called, tanks. And then of course we still need to build kind of here a tunnel entrance, I guess, and then connect it up with this area so that, well, people can either drive here on ground level or go up to level 1 to the departures. Well, I guess technically it's more people coming here from departures and going down here to the road here, but the people going this direction, they need to be able to go up here and then continue on ground level. Well, that's at least what we are kind of simulating with all this. One thing is here, what I can tell you also is, of course, be patient when you're painting your board. Don't repaint when you're having to apply several layers of paint. Wait, be sure that the first layer has dried up before you apply the second layer of paint. You will get a much nicer result. And then play around with gray tones. I think it always gives an airport setup quite a nice look when you don't just have the exact same colors everywhere. You don't really see that in real life anyways. So yeah, the more you can play around with colors there, and it's just slight variations in gray tones basically. For concrete, the darker you go, the more you go in directions of tarmac. Of course, there are some places where you have, for example, tarmac on the airport stands and then concrete on taxiways, and then, as we have here in Philadelphia, the other way around, where you have tarmac at the taxiways but concrete at the stands. There are many variations in the real world, so ultimately be sure to just make the things the way you like it, give it the look that you want to have at your airport setup. Now, I'm using this kind of tape here. I think it's called frog tape in English, but I think there are various versions of this. But this is really good for getting more precise edges. But of course, it can happen that there is a little bit of spillage underneath. But in the end, honestly speaking, again, this is so little, it won't really show in the end result. And ultimately, we are still applying a lot of lines here, which then can also cover up some of these minor inaccuracies. Now, I'm not entirely done with painting up the board. There is still a little bit of work to be done. I have noticed that in the US there are quite a few taxiways where they're using, I don't know if it's a different surface or if it's just painted, but it has like this, yeah, how to say it? It's kind of a matte greenish color that has been applied along the edges of taxiways, even runways. And that is something that I would like to apply to these newer areas, especially, for example, here. I mean, again, this will end up being a service road, but then we have this area, and instead of having it only in this light gray tone, I think I will at least make part of it in this kind of greenish color, but I still need to mix that up and find the really right color tone that I want, and also then of course continue this greenish part around here. I won't be doing it here on this side because that's going in towards the terminals, but on the outer edges of the taxiways I would like to try to add this greenish color that I have noticed at some US airports. But that's something for another day, and once I'm then done with the painting part of the board, we of course are starting to well, have to look at all the markings that we find around an airport. So center lines for taxiways and all the markings you find around aircraft stands, at the gates, and so on and so on. There's plenty to be done there. Also, all the service roads need to be painted in, and so on and so on. So lots of painting. For that, of course, we have special pens. All that we will then tackle in another video.